Hello, everyone, and welcome to our very first APAC streaming show. I am so excited to be coming to you live from Sydney, Australia. My name is August Simonelli, and I'm a technical marketing manager here at Red Hat. And I am introducing you to the very first beta edition of the APAC Hybrid Cloud Kopi Hour. So, two things about that title, right? We've got a couple of things in there that are interesting. One is that it's beta. So, why do I call it beta? Well, it's an evolving concept, and this is our very first show. So, we're just kicking the tires at the moment. What we hope to do as we go forward is highlight the voices and languages from around our region. We want to share the wisdom and knowledge of APAC Red Hat directly with you, and hopefully one day have maybe you on our show. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to it. But I'm calling it beta so that we can blame any mistakes on that, right? It was beta. What are we going to do? And the second thing I want to call out is the word I used, the Kopi hour. I didn't say coffee. I said Kopi, or Kopi. And this is from Wikipedia. Kopi is a traditional coffee beverage that you get in Singapore. It's really, really popular there. And if you've been there, you've probably had it. You've probably seen it. It's kind of part of the culture of Singapore. It comes in all these different types. And I know people here will know that it has different names and everything. The one I love is Kopi, and it's got the sweet condensed milk. It's super delicious, and it's super nice. So that's what we've come up with. We're going to call it the APAC Hybrid Cloud Kopi Hour. So what are we going to do? That's enough about caffeinated beverages. Let's get to these nice folks who are sitting here next to me. Well, they're not next to me, but who are virtually next to me. This is our panel for the first show. I want to introduce you to them, and then we'll kick off with our first question. So the first person we'll meet is Steve Ellis, and Steve is a principal architect out of New Zealand. Steve, why don't you go ahead and say a few things?
Hey, thanks, August. So I've been with Red Hat a little over 10 years now. But before I came to Red Hat, I had worked in IT for the best part of 20 years, helping customers deliver solutions at scale and watching this kind of cloud platform that we're so used to today evolve. A big part of my background's been helping customers, I say, grow things at scale, but often delivering solutions leveraging open source technology. And it's something I continue to do today at Red Hat. And it's really interesting seeing the rapid rate of innovation we can now deliver using a combination of, on-premise platforms and the environments provided us by those hyperscalers.
It's true, isn't it? We've seen so much growth over the last, you and I have been here at Red Hat for 10 years or more each. And yeah, things have just changed so frequently and so much. It's quite exciting.
Yeah, I mean, most of what I would talk to a customer about today didn't even exist 10 years ago when I joined Red Hat.
Yeah, that's for sure. Excellent. All right, next up, I'll introduce you to Dev Shanba. Let me just... Dev, go ahead. Dev's a principal architect, and he's based in Melbourne. Say a few words.
Thanks, August. I see we have a great hybrid theme going on in the panel. A couple of people working from home, some of us in office. So really glad to be here. For everyone, my name is Dev Shanba, Principal Architect with the Customer Success Organization in the Australia-New Zealand region. Been with Red Hat for just around 6 years now. And these days, I focus my efforts in working with our telco customers, make the most out of their investments in open source. And really glad to be here.
Thanks, Dev. Yeah, Dev and I have been working together for a while. We've been in consulting teams together, right down there, actually, working on solutions directly for customers. So we're getting a lot of variety here on the panel, and it's really great to see. Next up is Mohan Sita. Mohan is a GTM specialist. Now, Mohan, you're in Singapore, so you've probably had Kopi this morning. Am I right? Or is it not your thing?
Absolutely. I had a wonderful coffee in the morning. So in the local slang, it's called coffee. You're 100% true. So though we call it coffee from outside people, but the local people pretty much, there are some hawker centers here. If you go here, everybody call coffee, wo, desi, things like that. It's very common in Singapore. Glad to hear that title and history about Kopi. So just a quick introduction myself. I'm Mohan Siddha, based in Singapore. I work for uh, AOT Technologies in Red Hat. I'm part of managed cloud services, adopting or many customers are adopting managed cloud services alongside their cloud adoption journeys, right? So we help the customers on, especially on the Red Hat OpenShift managed services and AWS and Azure and IBM and Google Cloud areas. So our portfolio in this segment is growing. So we already have 3Scale, API Gateway, then Kafka, our query registry, and our data science open hub, right? So these are the portfolio right now Red Hat is apparently offering. So we are help our customers on adapting these Red Hat cloud services and day-to-day life. Thank you. Over to you, August.
No problem. I mean, and as Steve was saying, like just you naming off all those bits and pieces is pretty impressive. Like suddenly there's this portfolio that is just massive and covering all levels. And so that brings us more to the topic at hand. I'd love to discuss more about caffeinated beverages. You know, it's getting into the afternoon here. I'm already looking for my next one. But what we're not going to do that. I mean, that could be a good session. But what we're going to talk about today is specifically what does hybrid cloud actually mean to our APAC customers? So I think we're trying to think about how it's tackled in APAC and maybe how it differs from other regions. So for instance, do our customers in APAC start in the data center and move to adopting public cloud, or is it happening the other way? What's driving those choices? What's unique about our workloads and our geography that might be changing the way hybrid cloud is really interpreted here? And I think that's enough to get us kicked off. So Steve, I don't know if you wanted to lead.
Well, yeah, so just to kind of kick off some of the themes here, like I've dealt with in my role many different types of organizations, from FSIs through telcos, through government departments and large-scale enterprises. And they all think they're unique, but many of them are approaching cloud the same way. They've dabbled, they try something out, and then maybe the organization thinks they're going to go all in. But seldom are they all in on just one cloud platform. They don't even think that they're hybrid without realizing that they're adopting a hybrid journey. Because say they decide to use Amazon's platform to initially spin up some public cloud services. They want to front end their web applications and do some caching. Maybe they'll start to bring on someone like Cloudflare to protect their customer-facing platforms and do some like this distributed caching. But in the back end, part of the business has gone out to tender and deciding they're going to use Office 360 from Microsoft. They're already in on 2 cloud platforms while still continuing to run things on premise. So when we talk about hybrid, we need to think about more than just the enterprise applications we normally would focus on as Red Hat. It's a much broader conversation. So those organizations already have contracts with multiple providers. They'll be consuming SaaS, they'll be consuming compute, they'll be consuming, caching services and outsourcing other capabilities. And so hybrid actually has a much broader construct than we initially think about.
Interesting. And so would you say that some of these companies, they literally might not know they're hybrid simply because one division and another division has done that completely separate from each other? So they're not even aware.
The same thing used to happen in traditional IT. Many of us have been in that traditional IT environment where you often have organizations with 2 completely separate Windows teams, multiple Unix management teams, even within an on-premise footprint. The running joke for many years was many organizations' first foray into cloud was through the marketing department, who would slap down their credit card and go and buy some environment and spin up some new service to promote something for the business. And, various forms of backdoor IT. So even today, we're starting to see organizations realize that they're actually consuming off multiple providers, consuming multiple classes of technology.
I remember when I worked for a very large masthead in Australia, we found that certain dev teams were actually using SaaS components inside our homepage, and we didn't know they were there. And so in a way, we were going hybrid, and it actually caused trouble because often if that broke, we didn't know, and that can be a challenge. So I imagine, Dev, that when you're on site at a customer and you're seeing this hybrid mix, there must be a level of like embracing, but also like Steve's talking about some frustration around how to keep a balance and make all those pieces work. Do you see that on the ground as you're in these companies?
Yeah, I think an interesting point Steve made as well. Some organizations do think they are one way or the other, but they are kind of adopting the hybrid cloud. Some of the customers that I work with, telcos and FSIs, are heavily invested in the data center, so they have their own private clouds. But at the same time, they are using things like Slack, for example, for collaboration. They're thinking Atlassian products. So it really is hybrid. When they talk about it in perspective of the IaaS or the platform as a service. But there's a lot of softwares that they use, or they are really in the cloud. So there is that kind of balance.
Yeah. So Mohan, and speaking when it comes to how Red Hat is addressing that, right? We're not selling Office 365. How are we speaking to these customers about all these pieces, whether they be some of the non-traditional ones, or as Steve is talking about, more of those back end ones, and open to anyone to speak.
Right. So basically, I would like to start with benefit of our audience. What actually hybrid cloud is, right? So a hybrid cloud environment, what we are talking about today, is basically consistent platform across bare metal, virtual, and private and public cloud environments, right? So potentially, what we are gaining here is speed, performance, agility, and portability. These are the key things we gaining using this strategy. So many customers use this strategy for few reasons, right? So I just want to, before going to reasons, I'll call out two approaches here. The customers basically want their dev environment, testing environment in the on-prem, and however, and their production environment is on the in the public cloud or hyperscalers. And the second type of is the other way around, right? So basically, they want their dev environment and testing environment in the cloud, however, the production into their data center. So let's dig into these two customers, why they are following these two different approaches, right? So basically, the type 1 customers where they're starting their dev and SIT is still using on the on-prem or data center, they have huge capex, right? So overnight they don't just don't want to throw away this capex, capital expense, just move on to everything onto their hyperscalers, right? So that's one strategy there. So they have huge investment, and they want to just make use of their investment and still run their applications in
that sunk cost problem is a big thing for many organizations, isn't it?
Yeah,
and we talk of, we hear the hyperscalers talk about moving and accelerating people's journey onto their platforms, but you've got to take into account a sunk cost, and organizations, particularly today, are trying to sweat that cost for as long as possible.
Absolutely, yeah. That's this is the one type of customers, right? They have high investment. They just want to get the ROI before the scrapping up this entire thing and move to cloud, right? So that's a good strategy. And the second one, they want to gain the they don't want to manage the environment. They want to their team want to invest more time on the innovation rather than just managing the environments and their application life cycles, right? So that's another the cloud ecosystem today is giving too much of innovation, too much of cloud native applications available. You can just plug and play any of development in the innovation happening in the cloud environment. You can't do that the same way in the on-prem, right? So that's another kind of a customers. They want to start their journey in cloud. these are the typical two type of customers we engage day to day, and they have different strategies, but I can't say one is better, other one is less, but both are based on the customer. Both approaches as a good fit for their strategies. Yeah.
Yeah, but Mohan, for those sort of customers, which ones tend to have the data gravity issue? That's something that we talk about a lot in this region. Geographic issues, government issues around where we place data. We know about GDPR in Europe, but we've got similar constraints here in Asia. We're quite a diverse environment, lots of different countries with different geographic restrictions. Who's looking at data gravity the most?
So the government entities public sector is what I could say, that they are actually much worried about their compliance and data security. So that's another reason most of this public sector, they still run their production into their data centers, and they are okay with the dev and testing environment in the hyperscalers. When it comes to the compliance and their stringent security requirements, they can't go away public cloud and run their applications. That's where they run their applications in the data center.
And so for all of you, speaking about these decisions being made, is it coming from geographical stuff? Who is kind of leading and steering where these places are where we're choosing to lead to run apps, right? How is change? Who are the leaders in APAC, right? Who's steering the ship and making those decisions, and who follows? I know in India the banks can be very strong force and the leading decision. Who do we look to in APAC, to sort of start setting that course for finding our way into public cloud, into hybrid cloud? Are there any specific verticals who are handling that? Is it anything that stands out in APAC?
I think it's a real mixed bag. You've got some FSIs who were quite agile, decided to adopt, customer-facing services in the cloud fairly early, even though, moving core banking to the cloud is no easy effort. You're talking about things with high levels of business criticality, and we're hearing from some of them that the expectations now in terms of uptime and availability from the government agencies that regulate them is ever increasing.
Yeah.
And what's your SLA when you're dealing with the cloud? We talk about 5 nines. You try and talk to a cloud provider about true 5 nines level availability, and it's very, very different environment. So they do tend to end up with a hybrid mix. You've always got the greenfields or new business ventures who tend to be much more cloud native in their approach. But we've seen cases where government departments have gone to cloud very early, whereas other government departments have no plans to touch public cloud. You have a real mix.
Yeah. Is it taking, when you said like different business ventures, is it taking smaller companies to lead the way? Or are large telcos and such able to, like we talked about, just do a little bit and that's enough to get it going? Or are we not seeing that that's the way to go?
I think depends on who you speak with. Some of the telcos that I kind of work with have greenfield deployments. They are completely on private, and that's because of a lot of reasons. Regulatory requirements, again, a lot of storage demand, which they don't want to really want to push to the cloud. So that's one option. Again, within a particular organization, depends on who you talk to. So it could be another IT shop that wants to really push to the cloud, whereas another one will want to have everything in the private cloud.
So are the bigger companies and bigger customers being pulled in by smaller consulting firms who come in and are working with them and suggesting these things rather than trying to do them on premises? Or is there that drive inside the company because the large telco or whatever sees what's happening and it happily wants to move on? Or are they being kind of pulled into that by...
My comment earlier, the marketing department slaps down the credit card. An organization needs to do something really quickly. It's often outsourced to a third party. That's how often some of these things get kickstarted, and there's often very little governance applied. As these organizations are maturing, they're bringing in governance, they're bringing in some central control, And coming back to Mohan's comment, they want to kind of normalize the experience across their environments. And this is where Red Hat's been always a very strong player, because Red Hat Enterprise Linux has been that normalizing platform in the traditional enterprise, on traditional infrastructure, be it physical or virtual, and now cloud. And now with modern application development and the drive towards cloud native or Kubernetes type environments, if an organization is sensible, it doesn't want to repeat of the Unix wars or the Java wars. I mean, I spent a ridiculous amount of time helping people port things between WebSphere and WebLogic and JBoss. And you try moving things between, EKS and AKS if you've built, strong integrations into Amazon or AWS's platform. It's really, really difficult to move things around. So I think our strategy is really strong here, because it's a common platform regardless of where you're operating from. Right. Bare metal on-premise all the way through the hyperscalers.
So I was going to say, so talk to me, guys, a little bit about that consistency that to make hybrid cloud not feel hybrid, right? When we talk about everything's different, that's great, that's hybrid cloud, but that's like dysfunctional hybrid cloud. So with OpenShift, right, we can see the same thing in multiple places, on premises, self-managed, or even the managed service offerings we have. You're getting the same thing, so that consistency is there, and the ability to move applications is much simpler. How is that landing in APAC? Are customers seeing that? You're alluding to it, Steve, but Mohan, say a bit more about how powerful that is to be able to do that, and if that message is landing and people are starting to adopt, like going all the way from an OpenShift on premises into a managed offering of the same thing.
Question to who? I mean, Steve or?
Well, to anyone really.
Sure, Dev. I mean, are your customers doing it? Are they, if you're at that large, telco, are they playing with OpenShift in a managed way? How do they see those?
I think customers get it. I was just talking to a customer this morning, and he said they're quite intentional in their strategy in terms of where they are spending their efforts and their dollars. So they understand they want to have a hybrid approach. However, they are keen on getting both of that together really well. So the struggle they have is, how do they manage their internal processes so that both can come together and coexist? So that's what their effort has been. They are intentional. They know what they want to get to, and focusing their efforts there.
So
I'll take this. Yeah, go Mohan.
Yeah. Sure. You want? I'll wait for you after.
There will. We talk often about technical debt in organizations, and a lot of organizations have built up historically colossal technical debt to try and make environments appear agnostic to the development teams or the operations teams, be it they're moving things between Unix platforms or moving things between Java platforms or moving things between cloud providers. I used to regularly see organizations where the development team worked on using something like JBoss, but then they went to production on WebSphere or WebLogic. And then they could never reproduce their bugs. They could never reproduce their issues. The environments weren't effectively the same. With both RHEL and with OpenShift, we kind of normalize that environment. And it does mean, coming back to Mohan's comment earlier, the organization that still wants to keep production on premises, but wants to leverage the elasticity of public cloud for dev and test, can do that whilst providing a normalized environment. They know that the workload, they're deploying exactly the same workload, exactly the same way in dev and test as they're deploying when they run it in production. And that then drives agility. It drives a much more rapid development and release cycle. It drives a level of consistency that organizations need for the change that they're having to adopt today.
Build once, deploy anywhere, and have some consistency.
We've been talking about this for 20 years. Everything we've been doing has been trying to come up with the same answer. Yeah. And, we're getting close.
Right. It seems like, I was just going to say, like, we're kind of finally landing there, right? We've tried to say it. We've been pointing it out and finding ways to do it. But now it's really happening, because you really can get that consistency. And when you throw in things like GitOps, and the ability to deploy to those environments so easily and so organically, it's really just kind of accelerating things.
Yeah, I just want to add a few things. And when it comes to managed cloud, August, your previous question. So basically, the customers are very keen to move managed clouds. A couple of reasons, right? So, it's been several years now. The customers are managing their on-prem, self-hosted turnkey application platforms, or maybe in cloud, self-hosted again in the cloud. They're hosting their application platform, right? So experience many years, the few challenges I would like to call out here: life cycle management when it comes to version upgrades or patching, right? So for example, OpenShift 3 to 4, some of the customers literally struggled. They took exceptional time to move from 3 to 4 version upgrades. And when it comes to some key vulnerabilities and CV is available, the customer taking one sweet time to upgrade because the applications team is not supporting them to allow this upgrade, right? So they're giving xyz reasons. And security, container security, registries, and day-to operations, I mean, the list goes on, right? So this is something like a last thing I just want to call out, this one: consistent user experience. When it comes to hybrid cloud, we need a consistent user experience, irrespective if it's on-prem or hyperscalers. Wherever your applications are running, the consistent user experience very key factor when it comes to, right? So I don't want to see one way of deploying things in dev, and I don't want to see different way of deploying things in when it comes to the private or public cloud. So these are the some of the challenges, I mean, it's been customers are experiencing, and they're very sure that when it comes to application platform, it has to be managed. That's where we are driving this, we call it ROSA, Red Hat OpenShift, and AWS and ERO, Azure, Red Hat OpenShift. These are the two things we are offering in a public scale hyperscalers right now. And IBM and Google Cloud also, we have same offerings in different hyperscalers, right? So why they choose these hyperscalers than self-managing? These are the key challenges the customer experienced, and they don't want to just the entire resource don't want to manage these turnkey application platforms. Rather, just they want to go as a pay-as-you-go model, like and every enterprise today they're doing cloud adoption. Alongside cloud adoption, they're exploring this managing Red Hat managed cloud offerings. The main reason, whatever I call it just now, these are the main key few challenges, customers considering managed cloud offerings from our portfolio.
So when the customer does managed, because they're trying to avoid some of the heavy maintenance of looking after those environments, do we sometimes find that they don't want to actually run those things on premises at all? And if they do, yeah, how do they make that transition? Because they do have to look at those on premises solutions. So that kind of goes to that original question. Are they starting on premises and going, this is hard and this is so much easier when they go to managed? But then does that cause some kind of problem for the on-premises solutions, and how can we help them and keep those going as well? Because there will be some things where they have to keep it on premises, right, for whatever the reason.
I take this question. Yeah. So basically, see, it's continuation to what I explained my first time. So basically, some customers want full control of their environment, and that's where the dev and the SIT environments, kind of testing environments, they want full control, and they want to administrate everything, and they want to give that luxury to their developer teams and their internal teams to deploy, manage everything, and other factors like the capex, right? So these are the few things they consider on-prem. I know it's a bit challenging, the dev environments managing, and you're pushing your code to higher environments in hyperscalers. That's something when it goes to hyperscalers, everything it's taken away. All issues, burden, whatever customer facing in the down and the lower environments, it's in a way handled very easily by cloud providers and joint supports. In some cases, joint supports like Red Hat and hyperscalers join together supporting their environments, right? So, and on top of that, we have SRE teams who monitors 24/7 across the globe, and entire the clusters, and their version upgrades, patching, everything is taken care by our SRE team, right? So these are the some of the things I would like to call out. So yeah, it's a combination, a mix of self-managing in the lower environment, and when it comes to higher environments like production or pre-prod, you're pushing everything in the cloud. So you have some responsibilities. It's a mixed responsibilities in the lower environments, and when it goes to cloud, it's a different responsibilities there. It's actually a kind of a term. It actually brings a lot of advantages. You have a lot of flexibility in lower environments, and you're gaining the capex, whatever you did past few years investment, you're trying to get the ROI out of it, right? So that's a key factor there. And other way rounds also customer exploring because of a lot of compliance issues. The other one we discussed, some of the customer, they want keep their production in data center. Mainly the driving factor there is compliance and regulatory issues, right?
Yeah, I know one customer where they've got a mix of OpenShift footprints on-premise, public cloud, and managed. And one reason why they're running several services in one of the hyperscalers was it circumvented some of their certification for security because the provided environment was pre-secured. It was already signed off. They didn't need to be worried about some of the regulatory requirements for a particular service. So they were mixing and matching simply for regulatory issues. But I think from one area that I think can really help drive a customer's journey really accelerated is looking towards the managed services platform for new projects, particularly organizations that haven't invested already in operational skills around Kubernetes. Because just a developer throwing a workload at Kubernetes is relatively simple. Operationally scaling Kubernetes and dealing with logging and reporting and monitoring and everything else is a skill. It's a big investment. So outsourcing that to someone operating as a managed service lowers your barrier to entry. You can start adopting this cloud native platform sooner rather than later. So actually you adopting managed services as soon as possible, using it for that initial project, using it for your development teams, means that you can reduce your barrier to entry. And you've got an elastic investment rather than a sunk cost.
Yeah.
And then if later on you do need to bring some of those things back on premises because you're going live and data gravity is some other reason, our platform consistency kicks in. And that's really critical. And by then, maybe your teams are starting to play with the environment, get used to it, understand the differences between managing a Linux or a Windows box and managing a Kubernetes environment. You've upskilled your teams. So it's actually, I think our managed service offering is a great way to accelerate early adopting of cloud native.
Yeah. And I think you made an interesting point when you called out the regulatory thing. One of the questions I had is how is that shift to managed services affecting an organization's security landscape? Because the first thing is, oh, I'm handing everything over. What am I going to do? That's not safe. But there's many ways that it's actually an advantage, not only for the regulatory stuff, but with tools like ACS, with Red Hat ACS, you're actually able to manage, these different things in the same way. You apply security policy in the same way. So in APAC, where security is obviously very important, is it affecting things in a different way with managed services, or anyone having experiences with security teams on site, that kind of thing?
The security team's always been an interesting part of the puzzle. Capabilities, when we look back at RHEL with things like insights, is a really important tool to drive introspection into your environment. I talk about it in terms of proactive operations. And yet many security teams react negatively because we're providing too much data to Red Hat. Yeah. And all we're doing is trying to help their data experience. When they start moving to public cloud, often it's that balance between your contract with the provider and what the provider states is their security landscape, and then how your own teams look at hardening that footprint. And again, one great thing about our platforms is we build our security inherently from the start. So, OpenShift, our Kubernetes platform, runs on top of Red Enterprise Linux. Red Enterprise Linux has very high security standards. as part of just running Kubernetes, we implement SE Linux at scale and a bunch of additional security paradigms. So security is baked into our core. But then within some of the other geos we work in, like North America, you have government-specific hardened cloud platforms from the cloud providers that meets additional security levels. And we're starting to see that appear here. We're already seeing environments in Canberra for the Australian government and in other parts of Asia. We're starting to see government-specific ultra-hardened clouds appear, where again, it's a subset of not just our SREs, but the cloud providers' SREs that have access. They are hardened to a different level. At the end of the day, when you run in the public cloud, in theory, someone else could have access to your data. In practice, we hope that they don't. It's a risk that you're always taking. If you're ultra paranoid about it, then just run everything on premises.
Right. And as you said, what I think is so cool is you're getting that same Arcos, Red Hat Core OS base across wherever you are. So you're eliminating an unknown there. When you use maybe another Kubernetes distribution and you're having to patch those nodes and look after them, it can be very risky. And I imagine in APAC, it's very helpful to just know that you're getting that secure base all the time.
Well, Mohan said about life cycle as well. The life cycle of your Kubernetes environment is critical.
Yeah.
Kubernetes is an ever-changing ecosystem where it releases, 3 times a year. So depending on the workload you're deploying, you need to have consistency, but you also need to maintain currency. But you need to maintain the right kind of security landscape. And that's challenging because when a customer deploys a workload, it isn't just the OS and the Kubernetes layer and wherever else is offered by OpenShift. It's every open source library and toolkit that they're importing into the workloads they're running. That's the big game changer in this ecosystem today, is try and find anything that isn't built on top of a range of open source platforms and technologies that can be very broad.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing. So when it comes to managed cloud, right? So the industry standard compliance, for example, PCI or HIPAA, all this we are collaborating with the hyperscalers, and we are actually certifying all this, compliances. So many of this, including public sector and the finance customers who have these constraints. See, in a way, we are guaranteeing whatever you following the compliance in your on-prem, we are pretty much guaranteeing same thing in the hyperscalers as well. So they are convinced, and I can name it, hundreds of customers are moving from on-prem to our managed cloud services in the current era, where they are all convinced. They are all big banks and big public sectors, telcos, and commercial, like airways, logistics company, every segment you name it, all of them are taking this journey. So in a way, everybody is accepting, and they are comparing with what they're having today in the on-prem, what kind of compliance they're following, whether it's there in the hyperscalers. If yes, then nothing is stopping them, right? So they are just making the cloud adoption as part of their go-to strategy. So we are there right today.
So as they make this adoption and change, I want to talk a little bit about, and it's something we've talked about off air, is application and platform modernization. So that move of, now that you are actually getting into a hybrid cloud, doing things a little differently. And my personal, and I know Steve and I always share conversations about OpenShift virtualization and the ability to move VMs into OpenShift and drive them in a cloud native way. But how is that adoption going in APAC? Are VMs steadfastly there and they're never going to leave? Or is it is the infrastructure modernization creating an application modernization conversation? How are we seeing that out there?
I'll go first. So I think from that perspective, VMs are quite the standard. They'll still coexist. However, a lot of organizations, when they kind of do integration, they've realized that the move from VNF to CNF, there are parts where you could kind of have VMs and containers coexist, and that's kind of been the shift. But again, at least in the ANZ world, where I see VMs will still be there for the next 5 years or so easily.
Yeah. And Dev, with vendors, I know when you and I used to work on OpenStack together, and it was a fight to get them on to get hardware components moved into virtual machines. How is that progress going to now modernize into containerized? You've said they'll be around for a while, but are you seeing vendors willing to embrace even VMs in OpenShift in Kubernetes, or is that still a bit of a stretch and they're still not getting it yet?
I think the industry is kind of changing in a bit where the move is towards containerization. However, there are a lot of pieces that will still exist in the VM world. So they're kind of trying to bring everything into harmony where some workloads have been containerized, but some will kind of will be there on the virtualized environments. A lot of the greenfield deployment that we see are moving towards CNF, so a containerized world. But again, there are certain things. When it comes to integration, we see that there are a few pieces where organizations would still look at VMs and say, hey, we still need to have these applications which are VM based, work with the containers. So we need to have this kind of a hybrid approach where you can kind of marry them together.
Okay.
I go next. So I have few statistics here. This is my favorite topic actually.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
So we use this one of the anchor use case. We call it application modernization and migration strategy anchoring use case for especially in the APAC region, ROSA and ARO adoption, especially cloud services adoption, right? So according to some statistics, IDD 2021 report, 65% of legacy applications have been modernized to some degree in 2021, right? So, which is expected to grow 73% in CY23. So, you see that 65% of legacy applications have already been some degree, they touched some portions, maybe just plain as Dave explained, maybe just lift and shift running still VM, some degree of modernization, or maybe just infusing some kind of a DevOps or CI/CD pipelines, or maybe bit of containerization, or maybe monolithic to microservice. I don't know this, but according to report, it's already like 65% of already people, the customers are touching their legacy applications. And Gartner estimates that the new digital workloads will grow from 30%, which is actually 2021, to over 95% by 2025. So from 30% to 95% in 2025, that's the huge shift is going to happen in the modernization migration area. So we want to literally utilize this anchor use case and drive this cloud adoption, and especially when it comes to managed cloud, right? So we are helping customers using this anchor use case, especially modernizing their applications. Or the customers are just already modernized, maybe the workloads are running OpenShift on-prem or OpenShift 3.x. We're just doing lift and shift to the public cloud or private cloud, using this anchor use case. Or maybe in the other way, like the customers are two legacy applications and they want to go like phased manner, maybe targeting some, let's say, EAP workloads which is running on VMs and moving to OpenShift on Azure or AWS and fully containerized, right? So we use this literally this 6 factors. The first 2 are I don't call it. The other 4 like rehost, replatform, repurchase, all these 4 Gartner things, right? So we use those 4 R strategy in this our anchor use case, and looking the customer where he's today and where he what is his goal for next couple of years, and we do this assessment, basically platform maturity assessment. Based on the customer needs, we will help the customers to move from point A to point B, and this really happening. So every customer is very keen on this application modernization migration activity, and we are literally receiving so many requests from customers and helping on the customer journeys, right?
I think also when we take that out to the kind of partner and ISV ecosystem, we see some similar themes here. There's plenty of organizations who still run what's called COTS, common off-the-shelf applications.
Yeah.
So many of those originally were designed to run on virtual machines or physical machines, big fat systems. And many of those are being refactored in one of two ways. They're either moving over to a containers type platform. The ISV is modernizing the way they develop their applications. They're moving to microservice architectures. They're leveraging cloud native, and they're looking for a platform to run this on. And this, again, is where OpenShift is a great leveler, because they know that they can then run it on any hyperscaler, and they can run it on premises, and they can support a broad range of customers in the same way they could do in the past by supporting Red Hat Enterprise Linux. I think the other interesting shift is the number now that are looking at moving to SaaS-style models. So we're seeing an increased number of business offerings go off that way. So in some companies, they may find that core business applications now are they're consuming as a SaaS offering. They're no longer running themselves. They're consuming them beyond just simply managed services. It's a true SaaS offering. So then as a organization, where's the value? What are you delivering for your customer? So the important thing is, how do you build on maybe their APIs? How do you build on the capabilities of these SaaS services to deliver value to your customers? And your customers may be your employees. It may be some staff management system. It may be some customer-facing platform. It may be, as we've seen with the kind of digital platform innovation the last few years, the need to be able to deliver on mobile, not just on web. How are you fronting that? Well, you're going to deliver that in microservices. You're going to deliver that in containers. You're going to deliver that using potentially languages you've never used before as an organization who's been wedded to .NET and to Java. And you can innovate all of that on a platform like Kubernetes, like OpenShift. You can do it at scale. You have that. And we have seen organizations where they need to sometimes run components of that as close as possible to the SaaS service. So if your SaaS provider happens to be operating in the Singapore region, then you want to run maybe part of your API, part of your core in that Singapore region. But maybe your customers are running in Japan, so you run your front end in Japan. So then we start dealing with the geographic needs of your customer base, not just, is this on-premise or is it in the public cloud? And that geographic need and the fact you can now adopt resources from multiple cloud providers to meet that, I think that's a really important differentiator for many organizations in Asia.
And yeah, no, that makes sense. And when you've got all these different sources, I mean, how do tools like Red Hat ACM come into play? Do we see a strong uptake in the region for using tool like, single pane of glass management? You can pull in managed service offerings. You can pull in your Rosa and your Arrow. Talk a bit about that. Where is ACM playing in this kind of hybrid cloud wrangling in the region?
Yeah, I can go first. So I see a lot of ignition in ACM, especially when with this hybrid cloud strategy, customers are running an on-prem and hyperscalers, and knowing the fact that the single pane of glass, so you can manage these classes from anywhere, right? So, and that's the beauty of this ACM. So customers are understanding the advantage of ACM, and underneath adding ODF like a open data foundation kind of when the customers have DR strategies and even the stateful workloads like live synchronization or asynchronization. This is typical requirements when we are talking to customers, right? So it can be easily fulfilled, and your cluster also can be brought up just like this in single clicks from ACM dashboards. So these are some of the driving factors when it comes to why the customers are choosing ACM. And even security, it's add on. There are a lot of things to come when it comes to ACM plus ACS, right? So customers really understand these things, and instead of having plain OpenShift, they are going with they're adding this ACM as an extra subscription, and it is making their job very easy when it comes to managing this hybrid cloud environments.
I attest to that. I think customers are definitely seeing a lot of value in ACM. One of our customers came to us asking, we have all these virtualized clusters, we have these bare metals, we have some presence in the cloud, and we want to deploy our container native, cloud native applications in various clouds to address different um, use cases. How do we do that? I think ACM's done that really good job to kind of put that together. We have a consistent approach to deploying in various assets and having policies kind of manage that and have bring in that consistency. That I clearly see is the value and a game changer.
Yeah, the policy piece I think is really, really important there. You can define your corporate policies, you can define regional policies, but I think what we're going to see in the next 18 months from ACM in terms of how it's a game changer is the fact that we don't just scale up, we scale down. And taking ACM's management out to edge devices, so that way we can work with manufacturing, we can work with customers in the telco ecosystem, even in the retail type ecosystem. Even in the FSI space, ultimately many banks and other institutions are kind of retailers. They have retail points of presence. Being able to deliver consistent workloads in the same secure manner on very small, lightweight edge devices at scale, in the same way that you're managing large footprints, be they core banking or your telco core, your 5G core, or your core, government department type services, and you can do all of that. Not quite through single pane of glass. I mean, the single pane of glass thing became a bit of a running joke in the operations side of the tech industry for many years. But it's your kind of, it's the point where you bring everything together. It's your jumping off point. It's your control point. It's your kind of command and control center. And then on top of that, you can then continue to do things in a cloud native manner. You leverage your favorite tools for doing monitoring, reporting, logging, and extending the environment out. But there's your command and control center.
And I think that's so important. The consistency. We've been talking about that. If the complexity of the hybrid cloud environment is just amazing. 10 years ago, it was complex, but it wasn't like this. OpenShift levels that out a bit. But then you bring in something like ACM, and I think it's just the best entry point for things because you can connect so much to it. You can take old clusters and get them wrangled in. You can add, you can deploy new clusters with it. You can any compliant Kubernetes can be brought in.
We're doing a demo at the APAC Summit Connect events at the moment. Using the power of ACM, we're showing a true hybrid cloud footprint with a mix of ARO, ROSA, bare metal, virtual footprints. And we're showing the fact we can see all of them through that ACM-based footprint. And we now have convenience. We have choice. And even an organization who's deciding to go down a single path, we've just published on our main channel an update from Vodafone New Zealand talking about their recent journey with Red Hat, using our integration tools, using OpenShift, and the fact they've adopted ARO as already Red Hat OpenShift as a primary platform. But one reason why they went down that route wasn't just because of it being a managed service. It was because they could be cloud neutral. Whilst they're adopting a large part of this on ARO today, it doesn't mean that their future is 100% that way. They actually state in the video, OpenShift gives them cloud neutrality. That was really important to them.
Yeah. And I was just looking, I was trying to find the Summit Connect URL to share with everyone, but there's a bunch of those events coming up. I don't know if you wanted to speak a little bit just to, as we finish up here, the way that Red Hat is sharing in APAC. We've got events everywhere going on, and it's something it's worth reaching out and finding out more about.
Yeah, I think when we push this out, maybe we'll drop the link to the Vodafone session in the chat, in the notes. But yeah, reach out to your local Red Hat teams. Find out when we've got events on. We run an awful lot of meetups around our technology base. We've got a bunch of Ansible events happening right now in the US that you can stream live.
Yeah.
And that's another big part of our story. For all the things on the periphery of your environment, Ansible allows you to extend your automation and extend your data operations, and again guarantee that consistency much more broadly in your organization.
Yeah. And I think we could have a whole conversation about how Ansible fits into the hybrid cloud. Maybe that's the next show. But we are coming to the end of time. So I guess to wrap up, I mean, we're discussing what hybrid cloud means for APAC customers. To me, it sounds very much like it's a pretty consistent message across the world, and this is happening everywhere. So I don't know if you all wanted to have a few, just a final statement on that, and kind of just wrap up the point, just to share with the audience. Just if there's anything more about it, or
one comment from me is if we look at the different markets, in effect, we're a bit more closer to Europe, to EMEA, as we call it, than we are maybe to North America. Geographically, in North America, you largely have one set of requirements around security, around governance, and so forth. There is a few state-level differences, but for the most part, there's a degree of consistency. Here and Europe, you can have country-level differences. In Australia, you can even have state-level differences in terms of data controls and what you can and can't do. This is why hybrid resonates, I think, even better here in EMEA than it maybe does in North America. Organizations in North America can go 100% cloud because they know everything's running in North America. Here, you can't go 100% cloud because you can't be sure everything's running in your country, in your jurisdiction, within the controls you need to apply. So a hybrid model makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I think from just to kind of add to these, what Steve just said, I think the common differentiator I see is just the density. If you look at North America, for example, or for India, I mean, higher the density, the innovation and adopting of hybrid cloud is more. If you go towards Europe, it's quite a disparate. Again, ANZ for that matter, and you see, them kind of slightly trailing behind, but still adopting. Looking at these countries or regions to see, what's in, and then bringing that on.
Yeah. Mohan, did you have anything else you wanted to add, or you've got your statistics out there?
I totally agree with Steven, what he explained. Just to summarize, hybrid is something like a very good strategy. Need not to follow each and every customer, but the customer have some preferences on the use their already invested data centers and make use of the innovation going in the required agile. They need rocket speed, so they make use of hyperscalers to reach that speed and agility and stability, and use your the local DC environments to still continue your expenditure, reduce the cost and gain the capex, right? So these two things I want to call out. And hybrid cloud, when you talk about hybrid cloud, the OpenShift kind of a platform environment has become de facto because you need a consistent experience. We are playing with multiple environments and multiple hyperscalers, so you need consistent experience. That's something only the OpenShift kind of any platform can bring, that consistent user experience. So don't forget that the hybrid cloud is a silver bullet, but the app platform plays a very key role. So it's like a win-win for both. Like, you have to have a hybrid cloud strategy, you have to have the right application platform, then only your strategy can get the superpower.
Yeah, there's no one size fits all. Everyone starts with a different ways, have different set of requirements, but the common theme is they all want to go towards consistency.
Yeah. And I think kind of bringing this to an end, hybrid cloud and APAC is Red Hat. I mean, you can see we've just sat here for an hour just riffing on all the really cool things that make hybrid cloud, and I think we could go another hour. And so I think it's really kind of exciting that So as if you read Red Hat, it's just in our blood to do it this way, as you can see that. So I think reach out to a local Red Hatter. We have people all over the region, and they'll have this same conversation with you. And I think that's the coolest part. Is it's really about making hybrid cloud work for a customer, for a solution, whatever it is, making those products just be things that solve a problem. And I think that's the coolest part about what Red Hat and hybrid cloud, that we do that with it. So yeah, Rohan, more.
No, I just want to say thank you, August, having you and giving this opportunity, having me here, and it's really, we enjoyed knowing
fun.
each.
Yeah, so I want to just quickly reflect on that. So like I said, this was our very first session of doing this. This is part of the Red Hat streaming initiative. So it's something that we expect to do a lot more of. We're looking for, give us your comments and your feedback, and keep an eye on that streaming calendar, because we will be here with more events. We've got some great things planned, and yeah. So any last words, please? Anyone just pop in, say that, and then we'll wrap it up.
I think the one is, don't be afraid if you haven't started the journey yet. If you want to start this journey, go and talk to your Red Hat team, because we understand everything from your traditional enterprise workloads to the modern native at scale, whatever buzzword you want to throw at it, we're probably talking to a customer about today.
Yeah.
And I think our managed service offering is a great way to start that journey. It's a great way to accelerate that journey without you having to overcommit your organization, your investments. So you can do things in a smart way that delivers business value.
Nicely said. I think it's a great end. All right, folks, I think we'll go ahead and wrap that up. Look at the streaming calendar for our next exciting episode, and we'll share this on social media. And make sure you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and I look forward to joining you again in the future. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye bye. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thanks.